amazing turnaround, hidden courage of a female plumber, exposed by a Korean Mafia boss in 30 days. Emma wiped the sweat from her brow, her worn work boots sloshing through puddles of dirty water as she navigated the underbelly of a derelict factory. The stench of grease and rot filled her lungs, yet her hands moved with a deftness that had long since become second nature. Every wrench turn felt like a heartbeat. Every bolt tightened echoed her struggle for survival. Just one more job, she whispered to herself, the mantra a tether to her hopes. But the urgency to provide for little Lily, alive with dreams, pressed against her ribcage like a vice. She knew plumbing wasn't a glamorous career, and certainly not a career choice that instilled confidence in the townsfolk who regarded her with sideways glances. Did they think she was less capable because she was a woman? Because she was solo? The judgment lurked in every corner, whispering doubts that slithered into her thoughts. Yet a trove of ambition stirred beneath the surface, a passion for engineering that she tucked away like a secret. Would anyone ever see her as more than just a single mother with too many responsibilities? By the time Emma found herself working for Mr. Kim, her spirit was bruised but unbroken. His request had come out of nowhere. A man with a reputation for chaos offering her twice what she usually earned. As she inspected the plumbing hidden behind his insidious empire, a pulse of adrenaline surged through her. The gleaming ambition intermingled with fear. The stakes were high. The fast cash dangled before her eyes, tantalizing her. "You're good at this." He smiled too widely, eyes glittering like dark gems. Emma bit her lip, trying to suppress the thrill of validation. But lying beneath that thrill was a jagged sense of unease, as if she was being watched by wolves the whole time. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As days bled into each other, Emma's escalation into this world chipped at her core. Every evening, she nestled back into the warmth of her home, savoring Lily's innocent laughter. Yet the growing shadows of Mr. Kim's influence seeped into her once safe sanctuary. The thought of money made her heart race, but so did the haunting worry that it could unlock doors to danger. What secrets threatened the threshold of her life? And what would that mean for her sweet daughter? Each stressful decision swirled in her mind like a relentless storm. Should she embrace this lucrative yet perilous path, or reject it for a modest existence? The anxiety pressed heavier every day, as if she were trapped in a vice, fated to betray her morals for the chance at a better life. With each passing moment, Emma sensed the unrelenting grip of doubt squeezing her spirit. Tonight was crucial. With Mr. Kim's sinister smirk replaying in her mind, she faced an unbearable choice. Conflicting emotions surged in her chest. As she stood at the edge of her latest dilemma, the urgency of broken dreams clawing at her sanity, she realized the clock was ticking. Every second held the potential to change everything. Would she step into the shadows for the promise of light, or stand firm and risk it all? The tension tightened around her, pushing her toward an inevitable brink. The echo of her heart drummed in her ears, a harbinger of the tension that swelled within Emma. The dimly lit factory was devoid of life, save for the haunting sounds of water dripping from rusty pipes above her. She paused, torn between the promise of a better life and the loyalty she felt toward her own integrity. Every fiber of her being screamed for assurance, but all that surrounded her was uncertainty. She set her tools down, fingers trembling slightly. This was not just another job. This was a gateway to a new realm. A realm where she could finally provide for Lily without compromise, free from the relentless whispers of judgment. Yet, with Mr. Kim looming ominously in the backdrop, the taste of victory was laced with poison. Do I trade my soul for comfort? The question echoed hauntingly. Standing alone, she recalled the days of garage experiments with plumbing blueprints. The excitement she'd felt constructing makeshift models with her father's old tools came flooding back. Those moments when ambition felt pure and untouched by the dirt of her current dealings. Had she abandoned that little girl who loved building things? The stark contrast sharpened her resolve. She wasn't just a plumber. She could be a designer, an innovator if she found the right path. Emma's decision to cross into this underbelly didn't have to be a defeat. It could be a step toward a new opportunity, if she played her cards right. She envisioned her dreams expanded and untethered, moving toward something bigger than herself. With one deep breath, Emma brushed off the fear settling like dust on her resolve. She had survived worse. She could navigate danger. If Mr. Kim wanted her talent, she would show him just how valuable she truly was. A plan started to formulate in her mind, pinpointing her options. She could align with the sinister machinations of Mr. Kim, taste the forbidden fruit of fast money, only to lose herself in the process. Or she could channel her skills into creating a legitimate venture, taking the plunge into a business that could alter her life and others. Perhaps she could even recruit other women into a growing plumbing collective, lifting those who felt underestimated like herself. She would need information, connections, what Mr. Kim had plenty of. But then she recalled Lily's laughter, a soothing mantra against the harshness of the world outside. She couldn't drag her daughter into murky depths. If she would take the risk, it must lead them to light, not shadows. The decision crystallized. Emma tucked her resolve into her pocket like the tools she carried. She would confront Mr. Kim, not as a desperate employee, but as an equal armed with potential. The looming threat of the unknown followed her like a ghost. But beneath that specter, a fire ignited in Emma. An ember of courage nurtured by her aspirations. The time had come to face not only Mr. Kim's intentions, but also her own doubts. She needed to assert her worth and forge her own identity in this twisted game. Tomorrow, she thought. Tomorrow I will redefine this space. With that, another layer of her determination solidified. She could either cower, succumbing to fear, or rise to the occasion, shaping her narrative from chaos. As the night deepened around her, Emma grasped her tools firmly, feeling the weight of her choices pressing against her. There was no turning back. With her heart racing, she knew one confrontation could reshape everything, and a new chapter awaited just beyond the precipice of her next decision. Tomorrow would bring clarity, or catastrophe. Would she transform the darkness enveloping Mr. Kim's empire into a beam of light for herself and her daughter? It was time to step into the spotlight and reclaim her story. The sun barely broke on the horizon, casting long shadows across the factory floor as Emma arrived early, heart racing in rhythm with her pounding thoughts. Each step echoed against the concrete and metal, amplifying her resolve. Today was not merely another day. It would set in motion the changes she craved. As she reached the familiar corner where supplies were stacked, she recalled her father's voice, teaching her about the power of tools and trade. There was empowerment even in the basic act of plumbing, a satisfaction in transforming chaos into order. But it was more than plumbing. It was about redefining her identity as a creator, rather than a cog in Mr. Kim's corrupt machine. She set her tools down in a way that felt deliberate. Each item was an extension of her intent. Emma's plan required not only courage, but also strategy. She had to engage Mr. Kim, and while the notion chilled her, it also ignited a spark of determination. She was done living a half-life, hidden in shadows, fearing the repercussions of each decision. Her heart thudded as she envisioned the encounter. She would have to tread carefully. Mr. Kim was not just a businessman. He was a predator, a calculated manipulator. Yet, underneath that villainous exterior lay a darker undercurrent, a vulnerability she could exploit if she played her cards right. Before setting her plan in motion, she needed to equip herself with knowledge, The more she understood about Mr. Kim's operations, the stronger her position would be. She contemplated her connections. The women in her community who faced similar struggles were potential allies. If she could tap into their shared experiences and hidden talents, they could form a coalition that had power and unity. A collective might be stronger, she whispered to herself, feeling a flicker of hope. If we pooled our skills, we could revolutionize our industry. The idea settled deep within her, a burgeoning project that could provide both professional fulfillment and a support system. But first, she must face Mr. Kim without revealing her broader vision too soon. She had to approach him as an equal, full of ideas, making him believe she was willing to play his game while secretly plotting the larger narrative shift. As she wrapped her tools in a rented towel, feeling every curve and angle of them in her grip, she took a moment to breathe and collect herself. Reflection turned into calculation. She needed to strike the right tone, confident, yet not overreaching. He needed to see value in her proposition without sensing her underlying ambition. The factory office door swung open, revealing Mr. Kim, his expression unreadable. He appeared every bit the enigmatic figure of power she remembered. But today, her gaze didn't falter. She had something to prove, not just to him, but also to herself. With a steadying breath, she stepped forward. "Mr. Kim," she began, her voice steady despite the wild thrumming of her heart. "I think we need to talk." The moment hung heavy in the air between them, the potential for confrontation radiating off both of them. Would he accept her proposal? Would he dismiss her as he had before? In that charged silence, Emma felt her resolve sharpen, and the possibilities began to unfurl in her mind. She was no longer just an employee. She was a contender in this arena, equipped with ideas that could disrupt the balance of power. Now more than ever, she had something to fight for. Not merely her livelihood, but her future, and the future she wanted for Lily. As Mr. Kim raised an eyebrow, intrigued yet cautious, Emma sensed the shift beginning. This was her moment, one that could redefine not just her career, but the path they would tread together or apart. With a fierce glint in her eyes, she took a step into the unfamiliar territory of direct confrontation and decisive action. But deep within, a question flickered ominously. Would the storm of ambition she aimed to unleash lash back? And as she prepared to engage, Emma wondered if this conversation would indeed bring her closer to the light, or if it would draw her deeper into the shadows she had fought so hard to escape. The dim light flickered above them, casting an uncertain glow across the small office as the weight of Emma's challenge lingered in the air. Mr. Kim leaned against his desk, arms crossed, an inscrutable smile on his face. His eyes seemed to penetrate her resolve, searching for any sign of weakness. But today, there would be no retreat. Emma had come too far. "I appreciate your initiative," he said, his voice smooth like silk yet laced with steel. "You believe you have ideas that could enhance our operations." The question hung in the air, a subtle invitation wrapped in skepticism. "Absolutely, Mr. Kim," she replied, her pulse quickening but her voice steady. "I've thought about ways to maximize productivity without sacrificing quality. Investing in our infrastructure could lead to better outcomes for everyone, from the workforce to our bottom line." She watched his expression carefully. Any hint of patronization would betray his awareness of his power over her, and she needed to stay in control. "The tools we use have a direct impact on efficiency," she continued, recalling her father's lessons. "I'm proposing an upgrade, specifically, hydraulic systems that can automate several processes we still do manually. Our workers will not just be laborers, they'll evolve into skilled operators." Mr. Kim's brow furrowed, the intrigue in his eyes shifting yet again. "And you think this can come without significant investment?" He seemed genuinely curious now, leaning slightly forward. "Yes. I have already researched some grants and funding opportunities aimed at modernizing facilities like ours. We can capitalize on these to lessen the burden on our finances. she explained, each word carefully crafted to showcase her knowledge. Moreover, we could train our team to adapt to these new systems, raising their skill level and ultimately their morale. Every second felt like an eternity as she gauged his reaction. The lines on his face deepened, revealing hints of concern. Emma sensed a crack in the armor, and she pressed on. "Imagine the publicity of becoming a pioneer in this industry, Mr. Kim," she said. "Positioning ourselves as a leader could not only increase our profits, but also deliver a powerful message, our commitment to innovation in a field often overlooked." For a moment, silence enveloped them, wrapping itself around the tenuous threads of her proposal. Mr. Kim was calculating, searching for a counter. "You speak of change, but every change comes with risk," he countered, his voice low and deliberate. "What happens if this fails?" Emma took a deep breath, the question resonating within her. "I believe failure is a part of progress," she responded, her internal fortitude rising. "But remaining stagnant is catastrophic. We owe it to the women and men in this factory to give them growth opportunities. And if I fail, I'll take responsibility. But I'm willing to put everything on the line for this." The tension in the room shifted as the air thickened. She could see him weighing her words, the challenge against his inclination toward maintaining the status quo. This was a pivotal moment. Would he see her as a threat, or begin to recognize the potential hidden in her ambition? An unexpected spark of admiration flickered in his eyes, though he quickly masked it with practiced indifference. "You've convinced me to consider the idea, Emma," he finally said, his demeanor shifting into cautious acceptance. "However, let's be clear. You will need to prove that this is a path worth pursuing." The cautious optimism that began to swell within her was accompanied by an unsettling awareness of the invisible lines she might have just crossed. This was a small victory, but the war was just beginning. "Of course. I'll prepare a detailed proposal, and if you're willing, I'd love to pull in a few team members who can contribute to the plan," Emma said, her voice tinged with newfound confidence. "Very well," he replied, his tone now tinged with a subtle challenge. "But remember, failure to deliver might have greater consequences than you expect." As he turned away, signaling the end of their meeting, Emma felt the weight of his warning. With a mix of triumph and foreboding, she knew what lay ahead was fraught with peril. But she was no longer just a plumber under his thumb. She was a player in this game, and each move would require her utmost cunning and determination. On her way out, she couldn't shake the feeling that the true test was just beginning. Would she cultivate allies or face sabotage from those who felt threatened by her ambition? Emma knew she had to stay one step ahead to fully realize her vision, and as her feet carried her toward the door, she whispered a promise to herself. "I won't back down." But as she stepped out of the office, the chilling question lingered. What would happen if she risked everything and her plan unraveled? Emma spent the next few days in a constant state of agitation and focus, each moment infused with the urgency of her quest. She pored over data and insights, cataloging potential strategies and drawing on the knowledge she had gained from years spent immersed in the operations of the company. Her mind raced with ideas, each one more ambitious than the last, but clarity eluded her like smoke slipping through her fingers. The atmosphere around the factory seemed to thicken. She found herself peering into the eyes of her coworkers, searching for signs of acceptance or doubt. The facade of camaraderie they had shared during all those mundane days on the floor gave way to a chasm of uncertainty. She could sense a palpable shift, a new undercurrent that whispered of resistance. Conversations halted as she approached, eyes darting away, murmurs conducting like a subtle symphony behind her back. What was she becoming? The seeds of ambition were sprouting, but at what cost? Days turned into sleepless nights while Emma meticulously crafted her proposal. She gathered supporting data, developed thoroughly researched projections, and outlined detailed training programs. Inviting team members to engage would be essential if she was to win over Mr. Kim's skepticism and sway the workers' support. However, she understood that to confront the giants she faced, she first needed allies by her side. She approached Jake, a skilled operator known for his insight and experience on the floor. Emma had often respected his expertise, but she hesitated. Uncertainty gnawed at her. Would he see her as one of them, or had she crossed an invisible line? "Hey, Jake," she started, hesitant. His eyes scrutinized her, and she pressed on. "I've got an idea that could really transform how we do things around here. I'd love your input on it." His guarded expression softened slightly, revealing a glimmer of curiosity. Transform how? As she elaborated on her vision, she noticed his initial skepticism melting away, replaced by intrigue. They exchanged ideas, Jake's seasoned experience filling gaps she had overlooked. By the end of the conversation, he had committed to supporting her proposal and rallying others. Empowered, Emma felt patches of confidence prickling through her doubts. A sense of validation invigorated her resolve. She had to assemble a team that would bolster her endeavor, but she knew that gaining the support of others would not come easy. She could already foresee the whispers and the obstacles that lay ahead, especially other team members who might feel threatened. Around the factory, she moved with newfound audacity, engaging with staff members, fostering discussions about the potential benefits of upgrading systems. Each conversation was met with varying degrees of enthusiasm, but also skepticism. Emma's heart raced as she witnessed their reluctance to challenge the status quo. "I'm doing this for us," she would say, her voice rising above the hum of discontent. "But I need your voices too. We can lift this place up together." The echoes of doubt still rang in her ears, but with every small victory, each tentative nod she earned from her peers, she felt armor building around her spirit. The rounds of quiet conversations began transforming into a chorus of support, bolstered further by Jake's unwavering backstop. Perhaps it was not only her ambition that was at play, but the lingering dreams of a more prosperous future that resonated with her coworkers. Yet, shadows still loomed. Emma sensed a stirring resistance from others in the company, particularly from those set in their ways. There were figures lurking in the background, watching her rise with disdain. It became clear that the deeper she ventured, the more adversaries she would encounter. One evening, after a long day of breakthroughs and missteps, Emma found her thoughts racing as she lay in bed, wide awake. She mulled over the path she had chosen, the price of her aspirations weighing heavily upon her heart. Were she and her colleagues ready for the storm the changes would stir? The image of Mr. Kim's stern gaze returned to her mind. His warning echoed, stark and warning, pushing her to confront the tension building beneath the surface. The moment of reckoning would soon arrive. Emma's resolve solidified, eyes narrowing with clarity. "Ready or not, I'll push forward," she whispered into the darkness before sleep stole her thoughts away, armor clinking into place. But as the sun rose the next day, a chilling realization crept in. Confronting the changes would mean facing not just internal skepticism, but external forces, those who would fight to preserve their control at any cost. Would she be prepared to meet them unyielding, or would fear still the very heart of her progress? The factory hummed with its usual routine, machinery clanking and shaping metal, but for Emma, it felt like the calm before a tempest. She steeled herself against the noise, feeding off the adrenaline coursing through her veins. This wasn't just about machinery upgrades or efficiency. It was about the very essence of her identity and the tug of war she faced within. The first meeting with her newly gathered supporters was scheduled for that afternoon. Emma crafted an agenda outlining the changes she envisioned, bolstered by data-driven arguments and the promises of enhanced productivity. Yet, gnawing at her was the fear of how those opposed to change would react, particularly those already carving out a stance against her. When the clock struck 3, she entered the break room, where the air was thick with tension. The gathered crowd spoke in hushed tones, their bodies shifting with unease. Emma pressed her palms against the table, temperature rising as she noted the lack of eye contact and the cautious glances exchanged. In that moment, she realized the true weight of leadership. Before she could inspire others to follow, she had to first conquer her own lingering sense of inadequacy. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice trembling but gaining strength as she continued. "Today, I want to discuss how we can improve our operations and secure a better future for everyone in this factory." A murmur of dissent drifted through the room, voices tinged with doubt. "Why fix what isn't broken?" one voice called from the back. It struck like a thunderclap, and Emma felt her heart race. She had expected skepticism, but still found herself unprepared for this direct challenge. "It's not just about fixing," she pressed, steadying her breath. "It's about growing, evolving. We can innovate our processes, reduce waste, and ultimately increase our earnings. Together we stand to gain so much more." Jake's nod from her right ignited a flicker of hope. He leaned in, amplifying her assertion. "Look, I've seen the potential. If we jump in together, we can leverage this moment to achieve bigger goals." Yet the dissenting voice silenced the room again. "What about Mr. Kim? He won't approve these changes. You're just stepping on toes, Emma." Emma's pulse quickened. The obstacle loomed larger, but this time, it sparked a different kind of resolve. "Maybe it's time someone steps on some toes. Isn't that what we have to do for a better future?" A ripple of surprise coursed through the group, and she noticed a few brows lifting, even a smirk from one of her more skeptical colleagues. Embedded within their doubts were visions of their unfulfilled potential, and perhaps she was beginning to reflect that very possibility back at them. The meeting turned into a back-and-forth conversation, with Emma listening to concerns and objections, adapting her points on the fly. In highlighting the benefits, they discussed training, job enhancement, and perhaps even a safety net for those left behind in the transition. There was still trepidation, but she could see the barriers starting to crack. Her fierce desire began to resonate as a beacon rather than a threat. However, with every small win, she never lost sight of her mounting adversaries. The weight of their silence, the wary glares, it was like a shadow inching closer. Emma felt the shift within herself. She wasn't merely pushing for progress, but breaking through a glass ceiling she never realized existed. As the meeting wrapped up with tentative agreement to consider her proposal further, Emma stepped out into the factory, a sense of triumph enveloping her like a second skin. Yet doubt still lingered, and hardened glares from formidable colleagues solidified her notion that this would only be the beginning. It was then that a bold plan stirred within her, a means to confront Mr. Kim directly and unveil the support she had amassed. But in the depths of her ambition, she questioned if her courage was enough to challenge the machinations of those determined to maintain control. Standing at the factory entrance, gazing out, she whispered to herself, "It's time to face the hidden forces. But will I emerge as a leader, or be silenced?" The thought swirled in her mind, a fierce determination kindling in her belly. The challenge ahead loomed larger, and she felt only the beginning of a brewing storm, one that would test her through trials she could hardly predict. She took a deep breath, her resolve tightening. The real test is yet to come. The following morning, Emma stood at the factory floor entrance, the early light filtering through grimy windows, casting long shadows that echoed the uncertainties in her heart. The chatter of her colleagues buzzed around her, each conversation punctuated by laughter or annoyance, a soundtrack for both camaraderie and competing resolve. Amidst it all, the factory hummed on, oblivious to the personal revolution brewing within her. As she navigated the sea of workers, the apprehension from yesterday's meeting hung heavily in the air. Emma could feel it, the undercurrents of doubt, the silent skepticism that shadowed her every move. If she was to confront Mr. Kim, she needed more than fervor. She required a strategy, a calculated demonstration of her growing influence. Her first step was to request a private meeting with Jake to hone her tactics. He was not just a supporter, but also someone whose insights she had learned to value greatly. Together, they found a quiet corner of the factory, surrounded by the rhythmic clanking of machines that seemed to echo her fraying nerves. "Jake, what if this doesn't work? What if I'm risking everything for a change they don't want?" she asked, her voice a low whisper, quivering with the weight of her doubts. He leaned forward, his expression serious yet encouraging. "Emma, change always meets resistance. But if you don't push back against Mr. Kim and those who fear progress, nothing will change. You've already rallied support. Use that momentum. We can put together data that outlines the benefits, both for the workers and the management. Show them what's possible." Reinforced by Jake's words, Emma set about assembling her research. Late into the evening, she sat at her cramped kitchen table, papers spread before her like an unfolding strategy map. With each statistic and example, her confidence began to grow. She discovered not only the potential gains from new machinery, but also the personal stories of colleagues who had suffered under the weight of outdated processes. Fueled by her discoveries, Emma found herself pushing through her self-doubt, her hands flying across the keyboard as she prepared for the inevitable confrontation with Mr. Kim. She crafted a presentation that emphasized the human element behind the numbers, showcasing testimonials from her peers about improved safety and efficiency needs. Once she felt satisfied with her materials, Emma stepped into the factory the next morning, her resolve solidified. She soon found Mr. Kim, his presence imposing as he spoke with a group of foremen, laughter punctuating their conversation. Walking up to him felt like approaching a mountain. The sight of him commanded attention, and she forced her heart to steady. "Mr. Kim, do you have a moment to discuss some important updates concerning our operations?" He looked her up and down, skepticism etched in the lines on his face. "What updates? I doubt there's anything worth my time." She took a breath, reminding herself of Jake's encouragement. "If you'd let me explain, I genuinely believe it might interest you. Things have changed on the floor, and our workers need a voice, a forward-thinking strategy." He raised an eyebrow, a glimmer of amusement flashing across his face. "A voice, you say? I hope you understand that voices can get drowned out very quickly in my world." For a moment, Emma hesitated, a shadow of fear creeping in. But she clasped her hands tightly, her heart beating in a defiant rhythm. "That's why I want this meeting. To show you the strength in collaboration, not just control. We both want the factory to succeed. Let me show you what that can look like." The air thickened with tension, and for a heartbeat, it felt as if time itself had stopped. Mr. Kim studied her, the amusement slipping from his face as the seriousness of her request settled in. She realized that his gaze was not just one of judgment. It held a flicker of curiosity. "Fine. You have 10 minutes. Impress me," he said, his tone shifting as he motioned her to lead the way. As Emma followed him into the conference room, she grasped this unexpected opportunity tightly, her heart racing not only with fear, but with a burgeoning sense of determination. This was more than a meeting. It was a litmus test of her resolve and an unveiling of her potential. Would she rise as a genuine leader, or would the shadows surround her intentions once again? The doors swung closed behind them, and with that, Emma stepped into the unknown. The moment of truth was now upon her, and she felt the weight of her ambition pressing against her chest. The stakes couldn't be higher, and failure was not an option. The moment Emma stepped into that stark, fluorescent-lit conference room, she felt the air shift, a cacophony of anxiety clashing with her rising determination. As the door clicked shut behind them, sealing her within the confines of this high-stakes negotiation, she took a steadying breath. Mr. Kim leaned against the edge of the table, arms crossed, the embodiment of skepticism and authority. 10 minutes, he reiterated, his voice low and measured. "You may begin." Emma steadied the papers in her hands, her research laid out like a blueprint of change. The testimonials she had collected flashed in her mind, each voice a beacon of potential, each story a valid argument for innovation. She had practiced, envisioned her delivery countless times, but now that the moment was finally here, Doubts began to dance at the edges of her consciousness. "Mr. Kim," she began, her voice unexpectedly steady, "thank you for giving me this opportunity. Since the introduction of our current machinery, there have been a number of safety concerns raised by the workers. I believe addressing these issues could lead to increased productivity and morale." His eyes narrowed slightly, the hint of a smirk curling at the corner of his lips. "Safety concerns. Interesting. And what makes you think these workers care about productivity? Or their morale, for that matter? Because they spend hours, days, working in environments that demand more from them than what they're given," she replied, the earlier tremor in her voice giving way to a newfound conviction. "They tell me about the fatigue, the injuries, how some of them are afraid to bring these issues up for fear of job security. But if we improve our machinery and processes, we can elevate their voices and enhance the workplace environment." She watched as his expression flickered, shifting from amusement to something resembling contemplation. Encouraged, she continued, weaving in statistics she had dug up the night before. "Studies show that a safe working environment not only benefits workers, but also increases output significantly. More efficient equipment means less downtime and fewer accidents, which translates to financial gains for the factory." "I see," he said, folding his arms tighter, masking what she hoped was intrigue behind a facade of indifference. "You think simply tossing money at machinery will fix everything overnight?" "No, but I believe investing in our most valuable asset, our people, will create a ripple effect that transforms our entire operation," Emma asserted, feeling the surge of passion fueling her words. "They want to contribute to a successful factory. If they are heard and valued, they'll work harder. They'll innovate. They already have ideas that could be implemented, ideas that can save us money." Silence hung in the air, a weighty pause where the chasm between them felt endless. Emma steeled herself, refusing to relent despite the unease that gnawed at her. "And your strategy, Emma?" he queried, the skepticism resurfacing, though a flicker of contemplation still glimmered in his dark, deep-set eyes. "What do you propose?" "I propose a pilot program," she suggested, rapidly navigating through the layout of her ideas, driven by the urgency of the moment. "We can run a trial with key teams using updated tools and processes, collect feedback, measure performance, and analyze results. If it proves successful, we can advocate for broader changes." As she spoke, Emma saw him weighing her words, processing their implications. This wasn't just a meeting about machinery. It was a test of her worth, her ability to problem solve, to lead. If she could sway Mr. Kim, she could dismantle the barriers that had confined her for so long. A moment of hesitation passed, during which it seemed as if the world shrank to just the two of them. Emma could sense the tensions in her back tightening, the entire factory and its future hinging precariously on the man's next response. Would he dismiss her? Would he resist yet again? Mr. Kim shifted, his demeanor changing subtly. "Fine, Emma. I'll allow the pilot program if you can gather the workers' input and present it convincingly. But," he leaned forward, a trace of menace rippling through his voice, "you better make it worthwhile. If it fails, you'll find out just how unforgiving this industry can be." "Thank you," she replied, her voice steady. As relief washed over her, a fierce resolve took its place. She had a chance not just to succeed, but to carve a space for herself in a world where women like her felt invisible. As they exited the room, however, an unsettling thought crept in. What if this was only the beginning? Emma knew she was walking a tightrope between progress and peril, and there were still unseen forces at play. Could she navigate them all? The moment she thought the path was clearing ahead, she remembered the whispers, the rumors of shadows lurking in corners, waiting to pounce. She couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was only just beginning. The week after the meeting with Mr. Kim was a blur of activity for Emma. She dove headfirst into the initial steps of her pilot program. Each morning, she arrived at the factory early, coffee in hand, ready to capture the thoughts and concerns of the workers before their shifts began. Despite the initial excitement, doubt began to gnaw at her. Would the workers trust her enough to speak freely? Emma recalled conversations overheard in the break room, where laughter mingled with hushed tones of mistrust. They had seen managers come and go, all promising change but delivering only empty words. Fear tugged at her resolve. The stakes felt higher than ever. Failure in this endeavor would mean not just letting herself down, but potentially endangering her colleagues' safety and the future of the factory. On her second day of interviews, Emma approached Sam, a seasoned technician known for his savvy insights, but also for his reluctance to engage with management. He sat hunched over a desk, the weary lines of his face suggesting years of battling machinery and bureaucracy. Emma took a deep breath and walked over. "Hey, Sam," she started, hoping her casual tone masked her underlying trepidation. "Can we talk?" He looked up, skepticism evident in his eyes, yet Emma saw a flicker of curiosity. "About what?" "I want to gather some input from the team for the pilot program. There are real changes that need to happen, and I want your thoughts on the machinery. What do you think could be improved?" Sam hesitated, his gaze drifting past her as if weighing the risks of opening up. Then, something shifted. "All right, but you gotta understand, people won't speak up for fear of getting in trouble. It's not just the equipment, it's that they don't feel heard. They've got ideas, but no one listens." His words landed heavily. Emma realized the core of the problem was deeper than machinery. It mapped the entire culture of the place. Motivated by this insight, Emma began to strategize how she could create a safe space for her coworkers to voice their concerns. She needed allies, people who could champion change alongside her. By the end of the week, Emma had set up several informal meetings, allowing workers to share their views anonymously. She prepared detailed notes, gathering patterns in their feedback about both safety and productivity. To counterbalance her doubts, she focused on crafting a plan that would not only appeal to Mr. Kim's financial interests, but also to the human side of the organization's leadership. Yet the more she learned, the more the weight of the task pressed down on her. Each testimonial was another reminder of the risks the workers faced daily. It dawned on her that they were counting on her to bring their voices forward. Her personal growth was becoming intertwined with their struggles, and she felt an unexpected sense of kinship with them. One evening, poring over her notes at home, an overwhelming thought struck her. What if Mr. Kim was right? What if, despite her best efforts, the program failed? The fear of disappointing not just her peers but herself felt unbearable. The next morning, after another restless night, Emma stood before the factory's bulletin board. She had created a flyer to invite everyone to a workshop where they could learn more about the steps to safety she was advocating. Yet, part of her resisted posting it. What if it was a mistake? What if they turned against her, as they had with others before? But then, staring at her own reflection in the glass, she recognized the spark of determination flashing in her eyes. A reflection of the courage vast, but yet hidden. In that moment, Emma made her choice. She pinned the flyer with a force that echoed her resolve. She would not back down. As she walked away, a low murmur caught her attention. Some workers had gathered, reading the flyer. Conversations rippled around her, and she felt both electrified and unnerved. Beneath the excitement, seeds of tension began to sprout in the air. "Did you see who posted this?" whispered one worker, making Emma want to turn back, wanting to disappear into the shadows. The moment had come to both challenge fear and ignite change. But as the energy in the room shifted, Emma sensed that orchestrating a small movement might provoke larger forces deeply rooted within the company culture that had once silenced so many. Would others rise to the occasion, or would they retreat like shadows? As she made her way down the hall, the looming question filled her with trepidation. What would happen when the truth about complacency began to unearth those hidden elements obscured by years of neglect? The following week unfurled with the tensions and revelations that could only result from change. Emma watched as her flyer prompted a wave of discussions across the factory floor, but it also ignited a simmering resentment among those threatened by her initiative. Whispers enveloped her like a shroud, yet her heart beat steady with the sense of purpose she had cultivated. As the day approached for the first workshop, Emma worked tirelessly, sharing her outline with Jake. She crafted a presentation highlighting safety concerns alongside productivity benefits, combining feedback from workers with industry research. With each passing hour, her confidence solidified. She wasn't just presenting ideas. She was embodying a movement. The day of the workshop finally arrived. The break room's atmosphere felt electric, the air thick with expectation as she set up the projector, her heart pounding like a drum. As Amelia looked across the faces of her co-workers, familiar yet distant, she realized this was her moment to unify them under a common goal. It was time to transform doubts into collective determination. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice unwavering as she addressed the crowd that had gathered. "Today, I want to talk about not only our safety, but also our ability to create a thriving work environment for ourselves. We have the power to enhance our workplace." Though uncertainty flickered in some eyes, she pressed on, laying out the statistics she had gathered. Emma painted a picture of possibility, a factory where employees felt safe, appreciated, and motivated to contribute their best work. She shared testimonials from her anonymous surveys, each word resonating with authenticity, a chorus of concern that resonated deep within the hearts of many. Slowly, whispers morphed into discussion. People began to share their own stories and ideas. Emma facilitated dialogue, creating a space where vulnerability and ambition intertwined. Even those who had initially doubted her now found connection through shared experiences, stories of injury, fatigue, and the yearning for change. Yet, amid the constructive energy, shadows lingered. As the workshop ebbed towards a close, Emma noticed a familiar figure in the corner, Victor, a longtime foreman, whose icy demeanor had always intimidated others. He'd been watching her with narrowed eyes, radiating skepticism. She knew he was a significant player in the factory's landscape, and his discontent could incite backlash against her initiative. "Emma," Victor interrupted, his voice dripping with disdain as he stood tall and authoritative. "You really think you can just waltz in here and change things overnight? We've been doing things this way for years." An uneasy murmur spread through the room. Emma's heart raced, but she met his gaze, determined not to shy away. "You're right, Victor, but perhaps we need to rethink what has always been done. Our world is changing, and so must we, if we want to thrive." "Easy to say when you're not the one building the foundation with your bare hands," he shot back, the room hanging on his words. Emma felt the weight of collective anticipation pressing down, forcing her to acknowledge the underlying urgency of her cause. But sharing that foundation could empower us all, boost morale, increase safety, improve our output. Would you not agree? A subtle shift in Victor's stance caught her attention. She realized the confrontation could either be her undoing or the catalyst for deeper discussions. Emma focused her determination on making this moment count. "Let's create a factory where every voice matters," she urged. "You're the backbone of our work. Your experience is invaluable, but if we continue to fear repercussions, we'll stop growing as individuals and as a factory." With each word, she saw tiny fissures in Victor's facade, the robust defense he clung to beginning to fracture. The audience leaned in, encouraged by her unwavering zeal. "Let's test it," she suggested, seeing a moment of potential for compromise. "Your input could make a difference. Join us in developing our proposals, and let's see if we can push for progress together." "Count me in," he finally said unexpectedly, shaking his head in surprise as he stepped forward. "But don't think for a second I'm interested in turning this into some fluffy self-help seminar." The room released a collective breath of tension. Emma felt relief wash over her, acknowledging the tentative steps toward collaboration. However, navigating this newfound alliance required Emma to remain cautious. She had to balance progress with the need for trust amidst underlying distrust. With Victor's tentative acceptance, the workshop turned into a brainstorming session, generating ideas, feedback, and the beginning of a clear strategy to present to Mr. Kim. Days passed as Emma engaged her colleagues, fostering collaboration and enthusiasm in what felt like a cascading wave toward change. She spent nights refining their feedback into a comprehensive proposal that outlined not just the problems, but pragmatic solutions. The sketches of their ambitions were shaped by their encounters together. She could almost see it becoming a living, breathing document of transformation. And then, the day came when she presented it to Mr. Kim, standing before him once again, this time armed with her team's collective input and the weight of their stories backing her. "Emma," he began, folding his arms, a flicker of scrutiny lingering in his gaze. "This better be good. If you've wasted my time." "I've gathered feedback from the workers," she interjected, a steadiness radiating from her as the moment stretched between them. "This proposal showcases their needs and vision alongside improved safety measures that could enhance our productivity and morale." His expression morphed between curiosity and disbelief. As she detailed their collaborative thoughts, Emma felt the electricity in the air shift. Emerging from the meeting, she found a new sense of self. She was no longer just a plumber or a single mother teetering on the edge of survival. Emma had become a leader, a voice that had pierced through the shadows. The factory wasn't merely machinery. It was a collective heartbeat, pulsating with energy, ready to embrace change. Through her relentless resolve and newfound sense of identity, she reclaimed her narrative, transforming personal struggles into shared triumphs. With each milestone, Emma experienced not only professional fulfillment, but profound personal evolution. She embraced her role as an advocate, realizing every voice mattered, and every challenge faced was an opportunity for growth. In those fleeting moments of uncertainty that once loomed large over her aspirations, she emerged a renewed woman, reflected not only through her accomplishments, but solidified by each hand she connected with along the way. And as she returned home that evening to the warmth of Lily's embrace, the laughter cascading like music, the defining moment crystallized within her. She had achieved something greater than herself, a promise of new foundations built together, a commitment to forge paths in the plumbing world that had no limits. The future gleamed ahead, full of light and uncharted territory. Emma stood steadfast, ready to face any storm that dared approach. Her path was sculpted by perseverance, collaboration, and the undeniable truth that each day brought her one step closer to her vision, firmly rooted in the confidence she had cultivated and the lives she had inspired. Now, it was time to reinforce those connections, to share this tale with others who stood at their own precipices, ready to take the leap. You need to subscribe now to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories of triumph and transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and propel these powerful stories further. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Emma's incredible journey. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, because change starts with all of us. Don't wait even one more second to share.